President Cyril Ramaphosa there in his reply to the State of the Nation address debate that's been taking place in the past 2 days. Well, let's unpack this a little bit more. We're now joined via Skype by analyst Ongama Mtimka. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. It was a pleasure talking to you. A lot was said in the debate in the past 2 days. Do you think the President overall dealt with the questions that were raised?
Good afternoon, Peter and your viewers. I think the President, having watched the tone of engagement since SONA as well as the past 2 days, wanted to present a very calm and measured tone, and he wanted to project himself as the statesman, and I think he succeeded in doing that as far as body posture and tone is concerned, as well as, attempting to bring in a little bit of gravitas to the body politic. So I quite liked the measured tone and the temperament in which he was presenting, and also how he, even as firm as he was in responding to the gender-based violence issues, I liked that the tone was managed as thorny as those issues were. And he acknowledged the fact that it's not something which politicians should weaponize and use for their own agendas in Parliament. So, but also, as I listened to him respond to some of the specific questions, I actually began to appreciate how correct it is to actually have this question and answer session post-SONA, because it helps the President talk to some of the detail which in his address did not sufficiently address. So overall I'm happy, but I think with Eskom, it's just a matter of make-believe as far as I'm concerned, in terms of what he says is a roadmap to recovery. While the plan was out there for people to see as far as restructuring is concerned, it's not in itself a financial recovery plan. You may be able to, you may succeed in isolating the cost of the entire business of Eskom, but that's not the same as increasing revenues. So there's still a path to go. It's incomplete as far as I'm concerned. And the announcements which he made are announcements which help address the supply side issues in terms of municipalities and energy users, but not necessarily address the sustainability of Eskom from a financial and overall economic point of view.
Do you think that at the end of, you said that you were happy with his presidential tone, but when people will be listening to the substance of what he said, do you think South Africans will feel a bit better than perhaps their initial reactions last week after his SONA?
Feel a little better after having listened to him, because the specific and focused. He could not bluff his way through them like when presenting a State of the Nation address. And I think that this platform is helpful because, for example, he was able to speak to a lot more detail in terms of what's being done around GBV in real practical terms, in the security cluster, and from a policing point of view, from a prosecutorial point of view, but also from a social services point of view. He was able to speak to detail which he did not address sufficiently in his State of the Nation address. But also with respect to, for example, the recovery in the NPA, he was able to also speak to some detail there, which is a little bit comforting, especially around the budget allocations to that entity. But also some of the answers were provided by his own comrades when they were speaking. For example, what he spoke about today was what Ronald Lamula had alluded to, as well as some of the other ANC ministers who and his own party comrades who actually, provided a lot more information. So for me, what I'm saying here, Peter, is that while the State of the Nation address itself, is limited, the opportunity for questions to be asked by MPs and to have the president respond helps the president to talk to details which are crucial, but for one reason or another are not dealt with sufficiently during the address itself.
All right. I mean, there were so many things he spoke about. Perhaps one that's always been kind of close to people's hearts is the land issue. And he was careful to say land grabs will not be allowed to happen in this country, saying that people should study Section 25 of the Constitution carefully. But he said that this new expropriation bill will clarify the circumstances in which land expropriation will happen without compensation. Is he still being careful with his language? We just heard from the US's equivalent of the Foreign Affairs Minister, Pompeo, saying that land expropriation would be disastrous for South Africa.
I think that the president is doing well to respond to both the internal pressure felt by black people to have a breakthrough as far as the what the Constitution enables. But also, the message is carefully managed with respect to the response to the lies which are created by groups like AfriForum and everybody else who's opposed to this land reform, constitutional review process. I think that there's a lot of lies and manipulation that's created around this process. As far as the populists are concerned, they are creating the lies that once you've changed the Constitution, the subsection in Section 25, you are immediately going to have huge amounts of people having access to land, and that's not true. Neither is it true that South Africans will feel less property secure after the insertion has been made on the parameters in which expropriation should happen. So there's neither populist extreme, neither the populist interpretation of what this process is, nor the right-wing interpretation of it is making sense. At the end of this process, what you are going to have is an option which is available for the state to use, but does not result in itself in land being given in huge hectares to black people. Because you are sorting out only an option as far as improving the supply of land is concerned. But the distribution inefficiencies, along with the corruption that's been there, will be there after Section 25 has been changed.
All right, Ongama Mtimka, we're going to have to leave it there. As always, thanks very much indeed for your valuable insights. That's our political analyst there, unpacking the president's reply to the State of the Nation address that he did last week.